Hello and welcome to the DiLive podcast. Today we are going to be looking at a question from one of you, our viewers, around worthiness. What's the mindset around worthiness and unworthiness? So how is it that we become to feel unworthy? How do we get to that state where we're feeling like we're not worthy? And for many of us, we're not even aware that we're feeling that way. But what happens is we have experienced in our life somewhere along the line repeatedly an experience or someone else's words that have told us we are not enough. It might be you might have failed at something at school, perhaps it was sport and you couldn't run or jump or do whatever it is that somebody else did well. And even your inner conversation, which may have started from a parent or a friend telling you that you didn't achieve well. Because when you think back or look back at young children, very young age, we don't have any of that in us. We're not aware of being anything except whole and good and full of joy. Now, it doesn't take long in our journey for us to start experiencing things that are less than that from the people around us. So that's where the initial feeling will come from. Remember, feeling something it doesn't happen from just our thinking, it's repeated thinking. So someone's been telling you something, you've accepted that and you've run it over and over in your own mind to get into a state, a feeling tone that I'm not enough. And it could be quite subconscious by that stage where you're really experiencing it in your life. And so the biggest problem with this whole unworthiness, which is quite, rampant across the world, it affects the results we get in our life purely and simply because we begin to doubt that we are capable of doing what it is that we want to do. So I want you to think for a minute about some things that you would love. They might be just pipe dreams, something you think, oh, I'd really enjoy doing that. Why is it that you're not doing that? And you might have lots of reasons. I don't have the money. I've not ever had the opportunity. Some of your reasons will be, well, I don't think I'm capable of that. I don't think I could ever do that. And if we were to look at that together and explore that together, you would start to see that, I do have some threads in me of unworthiness at a deep level. And so this unworthiness can start to affect the results we're getting in our life, what we're willing to step up and do, which is the real shame of it, because you do have in you the capability to do whatever you desire to do. But that unworthiness streak or thread or belief really in you will stop you. And so it's all about changing that out. The hardest part about unworthiness for any of us is that once it's formed in us, it is a subconscious conditioning. And so it's not like you wake up every morning and think the words, I'm unworthy, but it's actually a programming or a conditioning in you that has been set up over a long time, and now it's operating in you in your subconscious. Now, that will operate until we change it out. And often people will say to me, well, my worthiness is coming from, they don't feel worthy, and then they look for worthiness, or indication that they're worthy outside of them. Now, this sort of affirmation that you're worthy never lasts, and it's almost can become addictive. You'll feel good for a while, but then that just becomes the norm, and you need to reach higher and do more, and it's not in line most often with the true desires of your heart. It's actually just this craving for having others outside of you tell you that you're good enough. Your worthiness is in you. You are worthy because you are breathing. Like you're here, you have this life in you, and that's where we want to look for our worthiness. You have desires of your heart that you really want, and you have things in you that you can do. You're so unique. Each and every one of us are so unique with what we like, with what we do, with what lights us up, with what we don't like. That's your worthiness right there, your uniqueness. And I like to call it your you-niche. So unique, you-niche. That's your you niche. That's where your worthiness comes from. There is no one else like you on the planet. There never has been, there never will be. And so once we start to understand the power of the life in us, that very life energy in you, that's your uniqueness right there. And no one can take that away from you. And while we, perhaps look outside of ourselves and say, I want to be that person, or I want to do what they've done, it's really, wanting to be somebody else other than ourselves. We're leaving ourselves on the shelf. We want to show up as who we are and know that that's where our worthiness comes from, in being authentically us. And so the way to change any of that, if you're feeling and witnessing that you're not stepping into what you want. I was just talking with a woman this morning who knows, like she knows, that she has the qualifications, the desire, the know-how. She's actually even in the business that she feels is her, and yet she's not as successful as she would like to be. What needs to happen for that to change is for her to reprogram some of her subconscious conditioning. And it all comes back to worthiness, believe it or not. We can find evidence around us as to, my business isn't succeeding because I don't have enough clients, or there's not enough opportunity, or, my interest rates are too high, or whatever it is outside of us. But the real issue, when you actually look at the laws of the universe and how our results happen, the real issue, or the real disconnect, is in us not believing that we are worthy of what we desire. And so once I started speaking with this woman about how do we change that out then? How do we reprogram our conditioning to be in line fully with the absolute fullness of our desire? And we reprogram it the same way that it became programmed in the first place. There's only two ways, which makes it pretty simple. You're either going to have an emotional impact because your conditioning lives in your emotional mind. That's terminology. Your subconscious is where the programming resides. And the way it got there was through an emotional repetition of something or an emotional impact. So, for instance, if you have a trauma, something happens that really out of the ordinary, that can reprogram your subconscious because of the emotional impact that it has. Mostly that's a bad influence. It's generally doesn't result in a good reprogramming, but the good reprogramming can happen through just this spaced, constant repetition of something going in. And that's how we all became programmed in the first place. The conditioning that you are living with now came about through your environment when you were young, and we just accepted it and we kept replaying it in our mind. Think about some of the conditionings that are very common, like life's not meant to be easy. We would have heard that a lot as we were growing up. Money doesn't grow on trees. You can't have everything you want. Those sort of comments were made almost flippantly around us as we were young people, and we grew up believing them and repeating them and just replaying them in our own mind. And so when we look at how do we reprogram away from I'm not worthy, well, we start saying that we are worthy. Even for your health, anything that you want to reprogram, okay, I'm aware I'm not as healthy as I'd like to be. Start actually telling yourself that I have ultimate health. Those sort of words are powerful. And as you say them over and over, then that will start to become your programming. It really is about filling your mind with what you want to be seeing in your life. And the more you do that, the less room there is for those repetitious thoughts that are full of what you don't want. That's the way to program. It is pretty simple, and a lot of you might be thinking, well, it can't be that easy. It is that simple, but it's not easy because you have already the momentum running of that program. It's so easy for you to think and to feel like you're not worthy. And so in order to start even thinking thoughts of worthiness is going to be, like pushing it uphill against the tide that's already running. And that's why often you'll need help. I had a beautiful mentor who had been working in this worked for 60 plus years, and he said he'd never seen anybody change their conditioning on their own because of that reason. We've all got a momentum of it running already. And so it takes some real constant concentration and, yes, good imagination to effect the change that we want to see. So if that's you and you think, I'm so sick and tired of being sick and tired, that was definitely where I got to, where I thought, I'm an intelligent person. I understood this work, but I just wasn't seeing the results. Running around in circles. Here I am back at the same place again, even though I had a lot of knowledge. If that's you and you just want some help to change those conditionings, then click the link in the description and book a call with me. There's no charge for that, just your time, and we can talk together about where you're at and what you can start to do in order to change your conditioning and see the results that will then be reflective of your new conditioning.